Welcome back to the show. In today's episode, returning guest Devon Howard and I discuss twin fins, in particular the mid-twin, which is a mid-length twin fin surfboard that was recently released from Channel Islands, and Channel Islands and Devon Howard co-designed this board. We get right into the weeds on this board, the design of the board itself, fins, the types of waves it's best suited to, the style of surfing you can expect to get the most out of this surfboard. We compare it to other types of mid-lengths. We got tips on techniques, a little bit of surfing philosophy mixed in there, plus more. Please enjoy my conversation with Devon Howard. Since last time we spoke, you have become a dad, and how's fatherhood changed your relationship with surfing in the ocean?
I guess I'm fortunate that my wife is a surfer as well, so I have a very understanding partner. I surf a lot less, but I don't have the, FOMO. I'm not the fear of missing out, which has sort of plagued most of my life. So I'm creeping up on 49. So I think being a father later in life, I'm not as fearful of missing all those days. So I'm surfing less, but the surfs are more meaningful, and I'm enjoying being a dad. So I think if I looked at parenthood as a burden, then I'd have a different viewpoint. But I see parenthood as, it's just a real gift, and it's enhanced my life. So it's, somehow it's all working out and balancing, and yeah, it's really good.
Was that something that sort of just naturally happened when you became a dad, that you just accepted your new role as a father and jumped in, or was the FOMO something you had to work on specifically?
No, I didn't have to work on it because, I think this natural feeling and excitement of being a father took over. And like I said, because I have, my wife knows that it's important. She actually tells me to go surfing more. Like I'd be more apt to hang out with kids and not worry about it. And she's like, no, you should go. This is a good window. Go for it. So lucky for me, I didn't have to work on it. I think if you're a young parent in your 20s, it's still, you're developing your identity of who you are. And, there's good and bad about being a parent late in life. The bad are the obvious things of, when they're in their, whatever, 8, 9, 10 years old, if you can't even get out of a chair because your body's so wrecked, you'd be like, man, I should have had kids sooner. But the maturity level is really good, that I think I'm available to be a better parent at this stage than I would have been 20 years ago.
Mm. Oh, that's good to hear. You're embracing it. So our first episode, we discussed longboards and longboarding. The second episode we discussed mid-lengths, but specifically single fin / 2+1s. And now you've been surfing the mid-twin. What's your relationship been like with twin fins in general since you're surfing in your surfing life? And how has that developed into the mid-twin?
Yeah, they are always, twins have always been on the fringe of what I've been doing with my surfing interests. 80s and 90s, 2+1 was really the dominant fin feature, or thruster. So I had longboards with 2+1s, little small 3.5 inch side bites and roughly 7-inch center fins. Because I rode Donald Takayama's, they were pretty narrow in the base. And in his fin setup, he ran narrow base but deeper to hold in for nose riding. And then the odd shortboard I had was a thruster. And then when I got into the egg boards in the late 90s, I guess, when I embraced them, they were 3 fins at the time. So twins, I'd had a fish or two over the years, and they just always were sort of just out of grasp. No particular reason. I think just out of comfort. And then I know I had a long fish at one point for a while from Josh Hall. I think it was a 6'9", And unfortunately, I went through a period where I was really broke and I had to pay rent and I had to sell some keyboards. I think everyone can relate to those periods in life.
Mm-hmm.
And I still think about, there's a few boards that I sold during that period that I've recently gotten back. I bought them back.
Oh,
And I've got some
the exact board, or
yes.
oh wow.
Yeah, it's probably really stupid. And I'm not great with money. Everyone knows that knows me. But I don't really care. They were special boards and I didn't want to sell them. But I'd never got that long fish back. It's a blueberry color. It's out there somewhere. Someone's enjoying it. In San Diego, especially twin fins, there's a real deep connection with them. Steve Liss and the fish, and all lots of shapers in that town have lots of ties to that design. And when, like I said, when I was getting into these egg boards in the 90s, it was all about the tri-fin. And then I don't know when it was, sometime in mid 2006, 7, 8, 9-ish, I just decided to put the 2+1 over onto it. And at that time, if I cared about what other people thought, I would have just done it as a single fin because they were considered cool. Obviously, they look cool. But I really liked the drive and the control and the ease and the comfort and reliability of the 2+1. So I just kept fine tuning that. And the people I was sort of looking at that I was inspired by would be Dave Parmenter and Neil Purchase Jr., among others, but they were kind of fine tuning that area. There were people riding Bonzer boards. If you have a 3-fin Bonzer, it's sort of I'm not saying they're the same, but I think they're in the same universe, kind of what you're looking for. You're looking for the freedom of a single fin, the freedom on the face, but that extra hold and drive and lift when you really need it in a critical section off the bottom and cutting back. And then when I started, I've developed different boards over the years, but in more recent years, the Channel Islands connection, which we've discussed in the past, it's where all the knowledge really blossomed and came together. And just a fantastic board. I've run into so many people. I mean, at this point, hundreds of people that have shared how much they like the board. And I was asked a lot, why didn't you do it as a twin fin, or why isn't it a twin fin? And it was really simple. I was just being true to myself and what I liked. Torrin Martin was making twin fins.
Mm-hmm.
That was a lane that he was in. That's his thing. I knew that this was going to work great as a 2+1. So once that was, that thing was sent off into orbit and it's doing its thing, I have nothing more to add to that conversation. And now people are enjoying it. And then I was like, okay, well, how does it work as a twin fin? Anything that's new, all surfers know this. That's why we keep buying new surfboards, because we're always, a new feeling's really exciting. It's like when you're dating and you kiss somebody for the first time is really exciting. I mean, unless they're a horrible kisser, it could be awful. A dead fish kiss is nothing to write home about. But a really passionate, intimate kiss it sends electricity through you, right? And surfboards can do that. And then sometimes after a couple dates or a couple times of kissing, you're like, I don't know I don't know why I thought that was so awesome. It's just okay. And that happens a lot with board designs, I think. And with the twin, I definitely had that new kiss feel, like, holy shit, what is this? It's just a different vibe entirely. So the difference, from my experience with the boards I'm riding anyways, I can't speak to others out there, but I played around with it. Took a few times to find out, well, what fin template do I like? There's upright fins for twin fins that are more Mark Richards inspired. Then there's the keel type fin family.
Mm-hmm.
And there are things in between. And then there are even folks that it's not a twin fin, but dabble in twinsers, where you add a canard fin. And that's a whole other thing I haven't even gotten into. I've tried a few. That's sort of the next frontier, maybe, to mess with those. But the really interesting things with twinsers,
Mm-hmm.
I rode a Larry Mobile in Mexico, a friend had, and really interesting things going on with Twinsers. And there are lots of surfers who are really into the Twinser thing. But back to the twin, I try to, I actually, I probably spent, I shouldn't brag about this, but I spent probably $1,000 easily on different fin templates. I just went out there and looked at all what was out there and just went on a journey for a year. Tried different fins, tried different placements, and where I landed, and I'm 6 feet 1 inch tall, 195 to 190. My fighting weight is like everyone has their fighting weight when they from 20 years ago is probably 180, 185. So
Mm-hmm.
I've settled into this dad body. I'm okay with it. And the keel fins are really have spoke to me. So I'm riding an AMK, that's the Almeric keel fin, and it was developed with a board called the Fishbeard.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like a classic keel outline, but it has a flat inside foil, and it's got a bit of a cant to it, so it's not just straight up and down. So the fin's towed in toward the nose a little bit and cants out a little bit. I don't remember the degrees. Don't hold me to it. It's 4 or 5 degrees, maybe 5 degrees. And God, that is really good. And the difference between the 2+1s I've been riding and that, and then single fins are sort of in a different lane. The difference I felt was acceleration. There was a different, almost like another higher end gear. Like if a car has 4 gears, this one had a fifth gear,
Mm-hmm.
the difference from me. And it was off the bottom. I could push harder and it would shoot me out with an added burst of speed up the face and down the line. I'm not saying like 2x or anything, maybe it's a 5%, more or something, but it's noticeable. And it gives you some confidence when you're going down the line, especially at a crowded break where there's a lot of people and chaos. Having that extra speed, you're allowed to make more confident decisions and avoid problems. And then the other speed place that I found was out on the cutback on the face. It had a different sort of acceleration. It felt faster. What I maybe didn't like about it, the twin as much, I couldn't do as tight of a turning radius. So if I'm on a head high wave, kind of like those pictures that you said you saw on Instagram, that those photos, I'm on a 2+1.
Mm-hmm.
And that day was head high to double overhead. And there were some tight walls and maneuvering and things that I knew I wanted to do. So I opted for the 2+1 because you can do a tighter arc. And when it's crowded, if you need to adjust and get around the kind of the buoys, it's safer. The twin fin, because of that wider fin, I just can't turn as tight. That's not a bad thing. It's just I'm just drawing a little bit different line. So how I describe it is the twin fin is a wider arc at a higher speed.
Mm-hmm.
The 2+1 is a tighter arc. It's not slower, but it's just a little bit less. You feel it's not quite as fast. But I mean, we're kind of splitting hairs here. This is getting like, from the speed side of things, I think the way that I'm choosing the twin or the 2+1 is based off of a mood or an attitude and what sort of line do you feel like drawing today. So if the waves are small, I'm enjoying the 2+1 more if I'm in a turning mood. If the waves are small, but I'm just interested in hauling ass down the line and making sections, like a really fast Australian point break that's just going, like if I was at Snapper or Kira and it was just hauling ass, I would go for the twin because that top end speed for me is higher. If it's a facier wave and maybe not grunting and not as much power, I like the way that 2+1 feels on the face because it taps a little bit more into the freedom of the single fin where you just feel like you can go. where you want. A twin fin, it's not that it's tracky, but it's a trackier feel. So that's why it's wider.
Mm, that's a
Does
good
that make
description.
sense at
Yeah,
all?
that was brilliant. Breakdown of the two boards. You're talking about a mid-length twin fin, correct? Or
Yeah.
twin
So
fins in general?
to be really clear, I don't ride shortboards. I dabble in fish here and there, but those experiences I just described are speaking specifically to what I call an egg. And I can't remember if we got into the nuance of all these names. Did we talk about the difference between
We
egg
did.
and
We
mid?
did. So I mean, why didn't you guys call it the fish egg?
Um, well, because I mean, you could, but there's no, I think you could call it a fish egg if the front had an egg, but the tail had a fish on it. So we have a rounded tail on it. And that is a
Touche.
name that's on the table that would, there's caviar, there's fish egg. I think there's folks out there who already have these names, but
What made
yeah,
you
we
go?
stuck.
What made you stick with the rounded tail rather than the swallowtail, though?
Well, I wanted to see through the project so that round tail, sleek, pulled in egg design was one that was very refined. The bottom and the rocker is just spot on. So it was more like of a curiosity, like how would this go? Because so many people asked, "Does it work as a twin?" I said, "I don't know."
Mm,
Or why don't you put channels in it? And I was like, well, I don't really think you need the channels. The channels is for grip, and that's just like a dance between the size of the fin
mm,
and the bottom contours you had. So the fins I was riding, I wasn't having any issues with the board slipping or sliding, and I wasn't having any issue with speed. So I decided, hey, let's just stick with that bottom we have, which is it's sort of double barrel through the fins with a bit of it's got a bit of V in there. Some people call it spiral V, double barrel concave. There are different ways to describe it. I think the true naming convention for the bottom I'm riding on these boards is spiral V.
okay.
And so there's no single concave in it anywhere. There's sort of a flat bottom, almost a tiny bit of roll, but pretty much flat from the nose to the forward third. And as you get to the middle, we start shaping in the two concaves on either side of the stringer. And if you were to take a straight edge and put it on the bottom of the board, there's from the stringer line to the rail line, it drops down. So there is like a type of V there, but it's scooped out. So it goes rail to rail really easily and real confident, but you also get some lift.
Mm,
It's just a beautiful combo, and the rail is great. So didn't see the need on this particular board to change the tail. However, there's other ones I'm messing around with that are very different. So what I've been riding is it's a some people call them a speed egg. It's just an egg that's kind of pulled in. This word mid-length, for anyone who hasn't been following along in the story, mid-length is just the name of the category, just like a shortboard. There's a lot of types of shortboards, just like a longboard. There's lots of types of longboards. Mid-length is just this really convenient catch-all. But as you know, there's so many ways to go
mm.
with mid-length. There's fish tails, giant square tails, giant squash tails.
Yeah, well, you've got me
And
excited
then
to surf a board like this already, just now.
yeah, no, it's good fun. And if you get a chance, watch the video that we made. It's on Channel Island's YouTube, and Michael February's in it, and this
Yep,
other
I have watched it. Yep.
friend of mine, Cliff Capono, really great guy. And you can see everyone's got a slightly different approach to it,
Mm,
but I think there's a commonality, there's a common thread in it, which is these sorts of boards. And I'm sorry if this is repetitive for anyone who's heard our chats before, but the commonality is there's mid lengths as a category. If you let's say if you're to ride them properly, if we're allowed to use that word to describe it. At their optimum, it's a rail surfing. You're using the rail of the board as opposed to tail surfing. So tail surfing is something more what you would be doing on a shortboard. There's less rail in the water on a shortboard in most of the maneuvers. Obviously, with a cut back and a bottom turn, you're putting a lot of the rail in the water on a shortboard. But in shortboarding, there's a lot of maneuvers in between and around that where you're really using a lot of the fin. You're surfing off the tail quite a bit.
Mm.
The tail and the fins are coming in and out of the water, releasing and re-engaging. It's a really exciting, physically demanding type of surfing. And then the mid-length boards, there's more finesse that's required and more knowledge of the wave, your board, and positioning. And so you're mastering this dance of maneuvering this long rail through the water. And something that's similar to it, if anyone's ever gone skiing, is telemark skiing. If you don't know what telemark skiing is, it's that rare individual you'll see up on the mountain that as they're going down the mountain, the heel of their boot is coming up off of the ski.
Oh yeah.
And they're going up on their toe, and they're doing these drop knee turns where they as they turn, the outside leg drops down and they turn. And that's, there's a dance and a rhythm that has to be mastered there because the skis are quite long, and you're just continuous movement and engaging and going back and forth. And that's kind of what you're doing on a mid-length. You're not pumping the board. You're doing these wider swoops where you draw down into the bottom of the wave, and you really want to be in the power source of the wave. You want to be where the bowl and the wave's cupping out, ideally, and you draw down to the bottom of the wave. And then it's sort of like a wind-up toy. You're winding up the board and springing off the bottom and letting it shoot you down to the next section. And technique-wise, you always want to kind of aim for 9 o'clock. You don't want to take mid-lengths typically and go straight up the face. You can certainly do it, but it will pull you out of that rhythm. Because the board will go straight up the face, and you'll sort of get this release, but there's so much rail and board that when you come back down, it invariably catches and you sort of lose the rhythm and the dance aspect of it. So the real benefits of these mid-length boards is to tap into that longer rail surfing. And so understanding the relationship between the way your fins are set up will help you settle into like the best rhythm. And then I don't know if you want to touch on single fins, if anyone is trying to decide between twin, 2+1, should we talk about singles?
Sure.
I can't remember if we covered that before. Sorry.
A little bit, but that's what I was going to ask you, is like, when it comes to the mid-length, first of all, it's like, I mean, the video you just mentioned, it's obviously the mid-length is nowadays, it's so refined. It's not really holding you back. It's almost adding to everything nowadays. And then, so what is the difference especially in terms of like technique and your approach between the single, the 2+1 and the twin?
I think my experience with the single fins I've been riding is there's probably the most freedom on the wave face itself, because there's no fins near the rail. Whether you're on a twin or a 2+1, when you have fins near the rail, they're turned in what we call toe. So the fins are actually on each side are aimed at the tip of your nose of your board. And so when you're going straight, there's actually drag occurring from a hydrodynamic standpoint. And you're still going plenty fast enough. It's not like you're dragging an anchor, but you can feel it. When those are removed and it's just a single fin, going from point A to B, there's a sense of freedom there that it's hard to put into words, but it's really electrifying feeling. And I think a lot of people are attracted to that feeling, that are surfing. They're not surfing for performance reasons. They're not surfing to quote unquote rip the wave. Everyone's a little bit, they're motivated by different things. Some people are really focused on maneuvers and shredding the wave and getting the fins out, like I was saying, or doing an air or doing these sorts of things. And there's a whole other group of folks that are really just in this for a feeling that they get that bleeds through the board into your feet. And I think the ultimate sensation comes from a single fin. So the upside, the sort of positives of the single fin are this freedom feeling in tube riding, especially. They feel great tube riding. And if you do a single fin on a longboard, they're exceptionally, it's really a benefit when you're nose riding. Fantastic. The only sort of downside to them, and for me, my own experience, is when I'm in a critical moment and the waves are kind of legit or bigger, and I want to push as hard as I can, I don't feel as confident. Maybe it's my lack of experience on single fins. That's quite possible. I also don't find that I'm getting the drive and the speed out of the turn. I'm not accelerating out of the turn. I'm kind of along for the ride with a single fin. And I think if you're of a lower or medium ability, that's a great benefit. You're not fighting things, aspects of the board. You're kind of just going, you're pointing the board and going, you're along for the ride, so to speak. And that's a really good thing. It's a low stress kind of surf experience. Because of my experience, and I'm trying to push myself and really find the limits of something. And I like the feeling and the pushback and the sort of being almost hanging on by my fingernails, like not really like a free solo, because there's really no consequences, but free soloing a rock that's 6 feet off the ground. And just knowing I'm hanging on by a thread, but I'm doing something incredibly difficult and pushing the limits. Having the twin or the 2+1, any fin or a quad for that matter, the fins by the rail, I'm getting what's called lift out of it, the same effect you get out of an airplane wing. And that's what we call drive. There's this connection to the wave. And as we're pushing through the turn, not only do we have hold and grip and confidence, we know we're not going to fall flat on our face. There's a sensation of accelerating through it. And that's just as fun to me as being in a race car and pinning it on a turn. And that's where I'm at. That's what I want to do. CT level shortboarder is doing that even in, I don't know, exponentially more. I mean, they're just at another level. They're taking that sensation to the next level. But for us, regular folk here on the ground, and it's a more realistic, most of us that could crank a really good bottom turn or a cut back, that's just like the coolest feeling. And my belief is that the twins, quads, any fin configuration that's near the rail more is going to give you more control, speed, and confidence. And so that's not me knocking a single fin. I think that's just acknowledging that the feelings, the sensation, and the performance I get out of them are quite different. And I think if you can look at all those scenarios, and if you're going to purchase a board or you're looking at what's in your garage, figure out what feeling are you after.
Single fin's like driving a Rolls Royce around a racetrack. You got to be very deliberate and predictive, and there's no room.
Yes.
You got to choose your line early on. You can't brake too hard. You're not going to accelerate out of the corner that fast. But gosh, it's a smooth, fun ride.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, absolutely. And I spend a lot of time on single fins. I like them. They're really, I feel like your surf style is just at the best it can be when you're on a single fin, because there's nothing really getting in the way of you fully expressing yourself on a wave. If you're into style and just sort of like feeling that energy, I think single fins are the best for that. Most of the I don't have any big boards that aren't a single fin. All of my long boards gliders and those sorts of things are all single fins. They're great. And then I don't really ride single fins. 6'11" is probably the shortest I have. If I get shorter than that, I want more drive out of the board. Then I need more of those fin configurations we just discussed.
Yeah. How does would you take the twin pin out on left-handers on your backhand?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I do get people ask that quite a bit. In that video that we mentioned earlier, unfortunately, I'm not going left on it because where I live, it's 99% rights. And back to the parent thing, I'm not really traveling anywhere for waves. I'm just focusing on what's here in our backyard. But Michael February in that video is, I think, exemplifies the potential and how great it works backside. And he's surfing it backside better than I can. I mean, I was like, wow, okay. I can do okay backside, but it's mostly because I'm not getting enough practice. But I'd like to go sit on a left point somewhere for like a week or two.
Same.
But it does go backside. You sometimes you just gotta not get a little over. You can't really get carried away or over aggressive. You kind of overshoot the mark. So when you watch Mikey, I think he's doing some of the best backhand surfing on that type of board. You don't see much of Torrin Martin doing it, but it is out there. He's the other guy I've seen do it.
Mm-hmm.
But it is easier front side for sure with long rail boards. It's easier backside on short rail twin fins.
Really?
In my experience.
I've always struggled with a traditional sort of short twin fin fish on the backhand. But I can imagine having more of a refined mid-length, a bit more rail, a bit more forgiveness would be okay on the backhand.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it definitely it goes. And so if you get a chance, revisit that and like really spend some time with the Mike. There's like only 3 or 4 rides of Mikey, but it gives you an idea. And you can see there's a moment or two. I wouldn't say he's struggling, but you could tell that it is not as easy as frontside for sure.
Yeah, well, I'll put links to that video in the show notes, etc., because it's a pretty inspiring video and it's a pretty exciting surfboard model. Congrats.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we're having a lot of fun on it, and yeah, we had some nice waves here this winter. It was a very short-lived winter in Southern California, where we're calling from, and things have quieted down quite a bit. But there are rumors that, not rumors, there are some scientists in pretty strong agreement, let's say that El Nino is very, very likely to be in the cards for us for next winter, 23, 24. So for the folks here in the west coast of California, that's the huge potential for surf and weather. Unfortunately, for anyone down in the Australasia areas, El Ninos don't often pan out to be the best for you guys for weather and waves. But it's been really good down in Australia and New Zealand for the last few years.
Yeah, we've had some good waves here too, and where I am as well. We've had not a summer, but plenty of rain and weather, which gives good surf, as you know. So it's been fun. Yeah. But there's so much room for these twin fins. I'm sorry, for these mid lengths as well. You've got this 2+1, which you can ride as a single. Now you've got the twin fin set up. I imagine it going. You might even be looking at trying a quad, playing with the tail design, and of course you've got having a little trailer fin in the twin fin. I always love surfing boards like that too.
Yes, yeah. The Gudauskas brothers are just coming out with a board that has that, but it's not a mid length. It's a shorter. They're calling it a 2+1 as well, but it's a twin plus a trailer. And people have pointed out to me, you shouldn't call the large fin in the center and the small side bites a 2+1. It's a 1+2. Yeah, I logically, yeah. I didn't come up with these rules, but
surfing has no rules.
It's not, well, it's not supposed to. It's supposed to be freedom, but there is quite a bit of dogma in surfing. If you think back to it over the years, it's everyone's doing this. Everyone wears black wetsuits. Everyone has white boards. Everyone does this. So there's two sides of the coin in surfing for us, which I'm amused by. I find it funny because we're supposed to be the most free thinking folks out there. In a lot of ways we are. But if you think about it, there's also a lot of rules. So it's just a little interesting.
Would you call them principles?
Maybe, yeah. Yeah.
Principles and etiquette.
Yes.
And then all creativity needs a certain amount of boundaries because pure freedom is just nothingness.
Anarchy.
There you go. Exactly. Well, Devon, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thing.
And excited to try this new board out.
Yeah, thanks for checking in. Sorry if I rambled too long. I don't ever write about this or speak about it too much. So it's fun to sit here and go through it with you. And I do get a lot of questions on Instagram, direct messages about this very subject.
Exactly.
Should I get a twin? Should I get a 2+1? Now I'm just going to send them this link.
Perfect.
Say, listen, no, I'm serious, and I'm trying to be funny about it because it helps. It's helpful for me to sort of work through it with you because I know it, I feel it, but then articulating it is not always the easiest because surfing is all based off of feels, and feels are what I'm feeling may not be what you're feeling. When you've borrowed a friend's board who says it's the best board they've ever had, and you're just completely baffled by why they think that, you think, well, this board's okay, or you might even think this board's not that great. So there's not always a universal sort of truth to this information, but I think that there's a reasonable amount of info that can give you a really good starting point. Like what we just went through, if you're sitting there thinking, well, what am I after? What do I want to feel and what do I want to experience?
That's definitely part of it. Yeah.
Sure.
And also it's like, if I get this board, what can I expect? And how might I need to rethink my approach to get the most out of the experience?
Yeah. And there's no guarantee on the information we shared today, but I think it's going to get anyone listening, if they've had questions or on the fence, maybe it nudges you in the right direction to then go down that path and then realize that within that path you've chosen, now it's time for a little bit of experimentation because there's a lot of variety and variables within those fin categories we've gone through. The single fin, there's really upright and narrow based. There's also really reiki and narrow based. There's really narrow reiki and wide based. And then it's the same as we remember when we were talking about the twins. It's like upright MR style, squatty keel style, or there are fins in between those. The other one I didn't mention earlier that I liked was called the BMT. It was a Britt Merrick twin. And it was between a Mark Richards style fin and the AMK, which was that bigger keel one I described. And that was probably my second favorite fin because it was a good sort of hybrid version of that. But I wish people the best. And if someone has a reasonable question, you're welcome to reach out to me. I probably won't give it this much in-depth info in the response, but if I can, I'll try to answer the questions.
Yeah, no, it's been excellent. Thank you for your time, Devon. Really appreciate it. I will put links to the surfboard model so you can check out the details and order one through CI.
I appreciate that. All right.
Awesome.
Well, hope to see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in. You can follow Devon on Instagram at Devon Howard. You can also listen to our previous episodes, episode number 41 and episode number 70. Please, if you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast and go ahead and give us a rating and a review. That's the best way to support us. Until next time, keep surfing.